Hey, my name is Garrett Campbell. I've been in sales the past 3 years and I own Better Endeavors, which is a business that helps salespeople and business owners close more deals, place closers, and build and scale sales teams for you. So let's get into the video. So in this video, we're going to be going over the requirements for like, when is it time for your business to actually bring on like a salesperson? When is it time for you as the founder to stop taking sales calls, remove yourself from the sales process, and bring on a closer to take on all of those calls? So that's what we're going to be covering here. So ultimately what it comes down to are all these requirements are based off of one thing, which is that A players want A-level opportunities and want to make A-level money. Like the baseline for a high ticket closer that's an absolute beast is to make 10 grand a month bare minimum. I've personally been the closer that's making 10, 15, 20 grand a month. I know plenty of other sales reps that have made that much as well. And if your opportunity isn't lined up for them to make at least $100,000 a year, they're going to go somewhere else. And you want A player talent to stay. Here's the requirements that I'm going to be giving here. There's 6 in total. Number 1 is call flow. Like they need to be busy doing stuff. Like they need 15 to 20 calls a week typically. So, that's 3 to 4 calls or so a day for 5 to 6 days a week. That's pretty standard. And this is given that you have a high ticket service of at least, $3,000 to whatever, $20,000. So that call flow really needs to be there. And then even beyond that, and this really shouldn't even have to be said, but lead quality, right? Like, they need to be good quality leads that know who you are, what they're on the call for, and what they're showing up for. That all needs to be established through your marketing. So your marketing has to be dialed and call flow has to be there as well. And with that, you need to have KPIs. So like, what is the show rate? Like, what is the close rate? Because you should not expect if your closing rate is 10% because the leads aren't there or whatever, for some closer to come in and be closing 60% out of the gate with the same exact leads, it's just not probable. What makes sense is for you as the founder to be closing 30% or so, and then an A player coming in and closing 40, 50%, that's very practical and something you can expect. But if you don't have these KPIs set, then you don't know if someone's actually good or if it's another variable external from that closer and their talent specifically. Which is why it's so crucial for the business owner to take their own sales calls so these are set in. The amount of times that I've had a business come to me wanting a closer and they're like, I'm like, okay, well, how many calls are out? And they're like, well, we're about to scale ads. I'm like, so you have no calls, no KPIs, and then you want a closer. It just doesn't quite make sense. So you take the calls yourself, establish the KPIs, have good call flow, good lead quality. And then next, the third thing is you want your sales process to be dialed in. And this comes with, your closing rate getting good as the founder, as the owner, right? In your sales process to be dialed in. So they have some call recordings they can listen to. They know kind of the flow of the calls. And as well, they know what type of questions these people are asking. Like when you're building out like your sales script, and when I say script, I don't mean a word for word, thing to copy and paste and sound like a fucking robot, but I mean a general skeleton for how the conversation goes. So when you guys are building your script, every objection, every question you get, write that down when you do get a call. Once you're taking these calls like yourself, write them down and then figure out what could I have said or what could I have asked earlier on in that conversation to prevent that objection from coming in the first place. And you can make this to your own. You can make this apply to your own offer. But think of like, what objection have I been getting frequently and what could I have asked earlier on in that call to prevent that from happening in the first place? Like ideally you end a sales call with no objections because you covered them and answered all of those objections in your actual pitch or your questioning process. So that is number 3, is the sales process being dialed in. Now next would be the offer to actually be productized. And what I mean by that is, and this is another situation I come across, is because you are the business owner and you're taking all of your own calls, you tend to make these like one-off, unique kind of crafted offers just kind of on the spot on each sales call. So it's tough if they don't have specific standards as to what do I actually sell this guy. Like if for one client you do revenue share just because you feel it, or you want to go retainer because you feel like it's right for him, it's hard to replicate that feeling within a sales rep, within a closer. So you can have two offers and that's okay. If they're below 5K ad spend, you know, if you're a marketing agency, if they're below 5,000 ad spend, we go, you know, retainer. If they're above that, we go partial retainer revenue share. If they're above this, we go solely revenue share, you know, whatever. If those are there, then you can replace yourself and that's productized enough. But ideally, you have one to maybe two offers that are the exact same. And then instead of, for your closer, just, you know, advice here, don't, on the sales call at the end of it, give people two options because they definitely will have to think about it. What you need to do is self-diagnose through your questioning process, like through understanding them more and more, which to diagnose them with, and then give them that. When you go to the doctor, you don't say, oh, you have anxiety. Do you want to take this anxiety medicine or this anxiety medicine? They say, no, based on your situation, based on your body, based on everything you told me, you need this one. And here's why. Like, you see what I mean? It wouldn't make sense to give them choices with the doctor. So in the same length, you don't give the prospect choices, you tell them what they need and why. So productize the offer and get them to a point where they know what they're selling so they can sell it with confidence. Number 5, the closer needs to be able to make a living there. As in, ideally, an A player needs to be making at least 10K a month, ideally like 15K or so a month. So with that, given that you give him, you know, 10% of whatever he closes, that's doing at least 100 to 150 grand, you know, a month, right? So if he isn't able to make that amount of money with the business, you need to, number one, identify why. But secondly, you need to understand that he is an A player. He wants to make A-level player money. So he's probably going to try to find another part-time gig or just most likely leave. The 6th requirement would be case studies. So proof that the offer actually works, right? Offer is king. Like, I'm sure you guys have read $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozi, and if you've not, I recommend you do. The offer has to be good and you have to actually be able to deliver on that service. So in a perfect world, you have a wall of case study, case study, case study, case study, case study. And if you guys look at my website, GaryCampbell.com, you'll see case study, case study, case study, case study, because my offer actually works, which is my sales training called the Closing Bible. It works if the offer is proven. So that's where I personally have a salesperson on my offers, right? Is because the offer is proven and I meet all these metrics. And lastly, just I guess a bonus for number 7, is you need to have the back end to be able to actually fulfill this service at scale. Like, if you're used to having, I don't know, 10 new clients a month, and then you bring on an A player closer that brings on 20 clients that month, like, do you have the back end? Like, do you have a client success manager? Do you have, you know, other hires in fulfillment, or can you get these hires for fulfillment as your closer gets on board and starts closing more and more deals? Because what you don't want to see, and the biggest thing that I've personally left an offer for, is when you have someone who doesn't have the back end for the fulfillment. So client number 1 that you close doesn't get the same experience that client 20 has. Like, I'll give you a full-blown example. I was selling for this marketing agency that runs Facebook ads for e-commerce brands. And he was used to onboarding 4 clients, maybe 5 clients or so a month. And I came on board and I was like, oh, like, these leads are pretty qualified, no brainer. I closed like 12 clients my first month being on there, which is more than double what he was used to. And like, client 11 and client 10 and client 12 come to me with all these complaints and say, hey, you said this was going to happen. This hasn't happened yet. And client 1 was happy as hell, you know, phenomenal service. But client 12, because he was so busy and couldn't manage everything, the quality of service started to drop more and more. So what happens to me as a closer is my conviction in the service drops. I was like, well, I don't want to keep closing more people. If you can't handle what we already have, how can you handle more? So I have less tendency to want to close more because you can't fulfill for it. So think of that, you know, as the business owner, right? Like, it is in your best interest to have your closer have crazy conviction in your offer. So anytime they get this complaint from someone they close, it drops that level of conviction that they have. So the back end really, really needs to be there. Or, you know, as you bring on the closer and deals are being closed, you can hire that back end fast and get it there once you've removed yourself in the sales process. That's some of the beauties of being able to replace yourself in the sales process. If you're taking 3 or 4 calls a day, well, now you have, a bare minimum 3 hours or so, 2 hours or so back in your day to focus on things like back end and focus on product and focus on marketing and all the other things that come with being a business owner. So that's really the end of this video. If you guys, meet all these requirements and it's time to bring on a closer, it's time for me personally to help build and scale the sales team for you. Or if you're the founder that is taking the sales calls yourself, it needs help dialing this process in, productizing your offer and closing more deals. Go ahead and book your free sales process audit below. It'll be on a calendar link here. What a free sales process audit is solely what it sounds like, right? Like, it is free. We're going to basically audit your whole sales process, identify what holes are in it, and if it makes sense to work together, cool. If not, no big deal. But check everything else out below. Check me out on Twitter and everything else you'll see there. I'll have a free training as well. Check it out, and I will see you guys on the next video. Peace.